the meeting to order. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. We need to approve the agenda. Need a motion? Yeah, it's on.
Move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We need to approve the consent agenda. Need a motion?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Do we have any audience delegations this evening? Student recognition, Mr. Wiegers, your students of the month.
My favorite time. I'm going to talk about our students of the month for December, as voted on by the staff, and I have with me Mr. Bryce Jenkins and Ms. Tatum Kelly, who are December students of the month. Tatum is involved in marching band, concert choir, NAHS, track, and cadet teaching. After high school, Tatum said she plans on attending either going to the Air Force or the Air Force Reserve, and eventually would like to major in aviation and become a pilot. She told me she thought the best part of high school for her was that she had some pretty great teachers who helped her get through everything. When I asked her who the three who had the biggest impact on her, she told me Mrs. Roney, Mr. K, and Mr. Bliss. And Mrs. Roney said, "It's an honor to be chosen as one of Tatum's most influential teachers. From the first time I met her, I knew Tatum would hold a special place in my heart. She's a smart, kind, and encouraging, and I'm so proud of the person she has turned out to be. I'm excited for her future and know that she will succeed in all that she does." And Mr. K said that Tatum's a hardworking student who's willing to challenge herself academically. She's also a great person, and I'm glad that I have had the opportunity to have her in class. Mr. Bliss said that Tatum is an incredible young woman. She's the type of student who is willing to help her fellow classmates however she can, but she's willing to help her teachers with anything they need as well. Her giving spirit is one of the many things that makes her worthy of being Student of the Month. I wish her nothing but the best as she enlists in the Air Force after graduation. Ms. Tatum Kelly. And then Mr. Bryce Jenkins, he is involved in soccer, basketball, tennis, student council, NHS, and FCA. And he said his plans after high school are to attend college, but he is still undecided where he's going to be attending or what he's going to major in. He said that the favorite part of high school has been making memories through sports. And when I asked him his three most influential teachers, he told me Mrs. Middleton, Mrs. Devaney, and again, Mr. Bliss. Mrs. Middleton said that Bryce is a very hard-working student athlete. Everyone knows his first love is basketball, but he is a leader in the classroom as well. He loves the sport like I love the sport. Every time he walks in the gym, he gets that ball and starts working. Bryce has worked very hard his whole life to get where he is today, and the joy it has brought to him and his family is inspirational. And then Mrs. Devaney said that I hadn't gotten a chance to know Bryce before this year, but I've been so impressed. He's eager to learn, he has an amazing work ethic, and he's fun to have around. He's the type of student who brings out the best in others, including me. Having him in class has been a blessing. And then Mr. Bliss said that Bryce is an amazing young man. He is a student that everyone at HHS gets along with, and I believe that it is a testament to his character. It has been a pleasure having him as a student, and I know he will be successful in his future endeavors. Mr. Bryce Jenkins. Thank you, guys.
You guys are welcome to stay if you would like, but you can go as well.
I'm still waiting for that one that wants to stay.
Keep waiting.
I
A long way.
don't know how parents sit there and don't cry
I
hearing
don't
some of the
either.
things that those teachers say about their kids. I would be a mess. Okay, monthly information items. Any questions on or comments on the enrollment? the expenditure report. Anybody have any questions about that? Okay. Or the revenue report? Okay. Donation acknowledgement.
So, per board policy KH, the administration hereby reports to the Board of Education the receipt of a donation of a 1999 manual transmission Saturn from Josh Ballard for use in the Cass Career Center automotive fire programs. The district is extremely grateful for this generous donation. We had a bunch of kids climbing in it just the other day. So,
Awesome. Will this be one they set on fire?
eventually.
Eventually.
Right now they're using it in automotive
Okay,
right now.
okay.
So.
They're trying to repair the transmission.
And then they're going to set it on fire. Okay.
After we cut people out of it.
Awesome.
Great.
Okay, the 2018-19 audit report.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Diana Klosterman, and I'm a partner with Westbrook and Company. We are located in Richmond and in Carrollton, Missouri. Have about 25 employees, 10 of which are auditors that rotate in and out on the audits that we perform. I see some new faces, so I'll tell you a little bit about us. We are auditing about 42 schools each year, along with another 30 or so governmental entities and non-for-profits. We also perform accounting for schools. We do back office accounting for schools that have one man or one woman bookkeeper shops where they can't achieve segregation of duties, and we do their accounting for them. So we're in the thick of school accounting right along with all of our schools. We experience the transparency requirements and the requirements associated with the new DESE accounting codes, all the issues that we had this year with populating the final expenditure reports. So we were right in there feeling it with you. We're in it. We're not dabbling in auditing of school districts. So we're very in deep on everything that goes on with schools. This evening, what I'm going to do is just present a couple of high points on the financial statements. I have some slides for you that I'll share, and then I'll touch on a couple of pieces of the financial statements for those of you that haven't seen a school financial statement audit before. But I'll start with our opinion on the financial statements. And Susan's just going to scroll right along with me. She's heard me do this a time or two, so we're going to work great together. But beneath the table of contents, we give you the opinion on the financial statements. And what we state in page 2 of our audit report is that the financial statements are presented fairly in all material respects. Now, when we're performing your audit, the first thing we do is some review of your internal controls. Now, we don't give an opinion on your internal controls. We use your internal controls that you have in place over your financial statements and your record keeping in order to determine where we're going to focus our efforts when we perform your audit. So if we see something in your internal controls that we think you ought to work on strengthening or looking into, we'll share that with you. But we don't give you an opinion on how good or how strong your internal controls are. That's a separate engagement. And I do some of that work. I do consulting. I didn't audit a ton of schools this year. I'm slowing down on audits and doing more litigation and consulting work. And so if you ever say, I'd just like you to look at this area, give us a call, I can do that. I did that for one of our schools this year and just went to one of their high schools and spent the morning there, read the procedures first, compared those to actually what was going on, and then gave them some recommendations. Sometimes you just don't have an internal audit function to get out there and do that. We offer that service. I'm going to move past the management discussion and analysis, which is good information that was prepared by your finance and folks and superintendent, and move right on over to page 13 of your audit. And that's pretty small, so I'm going to put my glasses on and look at it from here, and you guys have it before you, correct? Okay. So this is a statement of activities. Statement of activities summarizes your expenditures in the first column by the type of program you have, and then it works across to the right to reflect any charges that you have for those programs and any grants that you might have received in association with those particular expenditures. When I look at that, I compare to the previous year. That's the only way I can tell, where you came from and where you got to at the end of the fiscal year under audit, which is 6/30/2019. I can tell you when I compared instruction to the previous year, your instruction costs were up about $220,000. I looked at your student services. Those costs were also up about $100,000 when compared to the previous year. Your general administration costs, central services cost, And your building administration costs were all down when compared to the previous year. Your general administration costs were down about $227,000. Also looked at your transportation costs; those decreased about $60,000, and your community services costs decreased about $50,000. Regarding community services, those are any activities the school district participates in that are outside of K-12. That's going to be before and after care, adult education, preschool, those sorts of things. And I can't tell you whether it's good or bad to make money on those. Some districts in inner city offer all those services for free because they want their kids to be cared for before and after. Some schools want to break even. It just depends on the temperature of the board. In your particular case, the reason I red box those two areas, food service and community services, is the only two areas I see on the statement of activities where you could break even if you were working on those areas. You can see food service when you travel all the way to the right, lost about $20,000. And community services lost about $86,000. Loss is a hard word. Expenditures exceeded revenues. I want to say to you on food service, you have a food service balance, a balance that you've built up of about $220,000. So some districts, when they have that, are spending that down. DESE's telling you to do that, to get that spent down, either on equipment, improvements in your food service offerings, and so spending that down is not unusual in our districts that are carrying a balance there. On down below that, and you can't see that in this slide, is your general revenues. And I just want to remind you that basic formula revenue dropped about $106,000. You had a 16 decrease in your ADA, so those are in relation to each other. If we go on to the next slide, that's page 14, and this is pretty basic. It's a statement, a balance sheet, but it's on cash basis. So the only thing you're going to see there is your cash in the upper half, and then I've added a footnote that's back on page 26, and it explains what those balances are, those fund balances are. And I'm going to jump back there so I can see that. So in your general fund, your balances are restricted for professional development, $3,189. DESE has a requirement on how much you need to spend on professional development. Your student activities have $410,000 worth of balance carrying over to 2020, and your food service carries a balance of $220,000. Over in the fourth column, that's your capital projects fund. And you can see that all of your capital projects dollars are committed. You have two projects that you approved as a board before the end of the year, some asphalt overlay, I believe, and then some lighting at the high school. So all of that money in Fund 4 was already committed for projects that are going into 2020. Okay, we can go for it. And that's what we just talked about, so we'll go on past that one. All right, and we're going to move to page 15. So page 15 looks more like what we're used to as far as a statement of revenues and expenditures. And I boxed just the bottom column because we've talked a little about our row, and we've talked about revenues, talked a little bit about expenditures. At the very bottom, it tells us what our change in fund balance was from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. And in your general fund, your balance decreased by $353,000. In your debt service fund, restricted for just payment of debt, is increased by $614,000, and then your capital projects fund decreased by $920,000. And you'll recall you had some hail damage back in the 17-18 year. Finally got that money spent down to pay for those repairs, and that's the reason you see a depletion in Fund 4 of that $920,000. Okay. So let's talk about your debt for just a moment. We lump those together in three types. We've got your bonds payable, your direct borrowing, and then your lease certificates of participation. In the third column over, you can see your retirement of debt was $1.5 million, almost $1.6 million. And then over in the far right column, you can see what debt you're going to be paying down in 2020, which was $1.6 million will be paid down. If you slide on down to the next slide, you'll see your amortization schedule there for your bonds payable, and that's where we'll see that payment of $1.3 million on your bonds. And you can see those will all be paid off in 2027 if you weren't to issue any more bonds. If we go forth to the next slide, that'll be your payments on your leases and your direct borrowing, and you can see those will all be paid off by 2030. Now, if we go on to the next slide, I like to share some graphs with you because a pictorial is pretty nice when you're looking at these financial statements. This first one is a graph of your revenues, and we do a 5-year comparison. We probably have 15 years of history on you if you ever wanted that. But you can see that what we've done is a bar graph to show your local, county, state, federal, and other revenue. And you can see your local revenue increased by about 1%, and most of that was an increase in your property taxes. You also had some increases on your earnings on investments, so that's your local revenue. You can see that your state revenue dropped a little bit. Your state, like I said, basic formula dropped, and you had a 16 ADA drop, and so those that's what happens. When you have an ADA drop, you're going to get less basic formula money. You can see a big drop in your federal revenue. That's because all your drawdowns hadn't occurred yet on your federal revenue. So some of the money on your federal revenue is actually going to drop into 2020 for fiscal year and 19 expenditures. So you'll see a bump probably in 2020 of your federal revenues. The next slide is your expenditures. And again, we compare 5 years, and we can see that your expenditures all across the board were pretty even. That first column is salaries and benefits. And I always like to remind my school districts, you want to look at, when you're comparing yourself to another district, you're like, well, we got 75% of our budget is spent on salaries and benefits. How does that compare with other districts? Two things you got to look at is whether or not you outsource food service and whether or not you outsource transportation. Otherwise, you're not comparing apples to apples. So look at the school you're comparing yourself to and see what they outsource versus what you outsource. All right, and we can go on to the next slide, which is the most exciting. And that is two areas. That is your reserve ratio and your average daily attendance. And that first is your reserve ratio. And this year, like I said, your ADA dropped about 16. That's your average daily attendance. And so you're down to 2,191. And you've been having a little slide down. I think that graph is a little unfriendly. We could spread that out a little bit because your drop has, over the past 5 years, it's dropped from 2,322 down to 2,192. So that's not as drastic as it looks like on that graph. And then on down is or on up then is your reserve ratio. Your reserve ratio is at 23%. That's terrific. We like our schools to have around a 24% reserve ratio, and the reason is because you don't get your property tax money until December. You got bills that you're paying from August to December, and your revenues kind of have a bell-shaped curve. So you got your expenditures up here, but your revenues are here until you get to December. And so it's nice to have at least 3 months of reserves in order to cover your bills that you have coming due. All right. When we're out for your audit, we look at your compliance with Missouri laws and regulations. Specifically, we look at whether you're complying on the budget requirements, how you spend your money, your purchasing requirements, how you report your attendance and transportation. And then we give you an opinion on how you're complying with Missouri laws and regulations. And we're saying there that we agree with the district's assertions that you were complying with those particular state statutes. We did have one comment, and if you'll go on to the next page, it's an immaterial comment, but it did make you some money. On transportation, you're sharing some expense on your homeless transportation, but didn't get that on your transportation report that you submitted to DESE. Once we got that on there, it gained about $5,700 worth of revenue. So good and bad there. So you got a little comment in here, but you had some increased revenue. If we slide on forward, we also, like I said, we don't opine on your internal controls, but if we see something you need to work on, we sure let you know that, something you need to strengthen or improve upon to safeguard the assets of the district. And we'll get to that in a slide back from here. Our next report talks about your compliance with federal program expenditures. There's 14 compliance requirements associated with every federal program revenue that you receive. We're not required to audit all 14 of those anymore under the uniform guidance, but we are required to audit quite a few of those. We audited Title I this year and special education, which was a real challenge because DESE didn't even open up the final expenditure report till late October, I believe. So that's the reason I'm here in December, is because we were waiting on DESE to open that up so you all could get that populated. We indicate in our report, though, that we saw no noncompliance with expenditure of federal dollars. And I audited that section this year. That was my section. So I audited Title I and special education and saw no noncompliance, no unallowable cost associated with those programs. Now, if we go forth to the next page, this is your report that we're required to put in your audit when we do a major program audit, when we audit your federal programs. And the reason we have to audit those is you had about $1.7 million worth of federal programs. When you have over $750,000, then we have to do that single audit, which is what we did. And you can see up there at the top, we do have a weakness in your internal controls, and that has to do with your administration of your software and what's under the hat of your business office manager, and that'll be on this next page. We've been recommending that you move the system administrator function off of your business office manager, move that over to IT, and then limit some of the areas that she has in order to strengthen your internal controls. And I know you're all looking into that and working on that, but that's something you'll want to keep before you and make sure you get some changes made there. All right. We did not have any recommendations this year other than to comment on your segregation of duties. We issued another 2-page report called the Required Communications, and it just says in there that we did not have any issues while we were working with management. We really had a terrific experience here working with the whole team here at Central Office. Kathy's group gathers the information, gets it back to us quickly, and allows us to do a lot of work in just a few short days. And so we really appreciate everyone's cooperation while we're out here. We're made welcome, and we're provided with information that we request in a timely manner. So no concerns at all with working with management. We are required to let you know that. Do you all have any questions for me?
I just have one.
Yes, ma'am.
I noticed on one of the pages that capital assets are not included,
Correct.
and why is that?
You're on modified cash basis, and so capital assets have never been accumulated into a depreciation schedule, if you will, listing all the assets. We only have 2 districts that ever went to the work to go back and accumulate all the data on their infrastructure. Most districts decided not to put the effort out there. Those districts that did do that had to hire a third party. They went out and did an inventory of the whole district, went back and found all the records to find the original purchase price and put those on there. And most districts just don't see a value to that.
So you'd have to just balance it out from all that information.
That's correct.
Okay.
And you don't, there's no tax reason to do that, so the cost outweighed the benefits. Mm-hmm.
All right. Got anything
Well, thank you
else?
so much. Y'all have a Merry Christmas.
You too.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Oh, it's a motion? Oh, okay, gotcha. I would have passed right by that, thank you. We need a motion to approve the audit.
I move we approve the 18-19 audit as presented.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The assessment and evaluation of district programs. Paul, are you going to do the budget tonight?
Yes, I am. So. Why are you laughing? I don't appreciate that.
You're going to do a fabulous job. I don't even worry.
I would like to take credit for all of this. However, Kathy, as you know, does this. So she generates some excellent reports. This is for the month ending, it should be November 30th of 2019. You can see the comparisons of budget to actual, and then the revenue and expenditure graph from last year to this year, so you can see a comparison as well. So that's pretty much it.
That's what we're getting. All right. That's good. Good job. Moving on to transportation program review.
Yeah, program review is in there. Just to highlight a couple things on there. We're in our 3rd year with Durham. Wanda Dave serves as our director out there. She's here tonight too. Couple highlights just to look at that we meet weekly and kind of talk through some stuff, and are always trying to make sure we meet our goal, which is to transport our students safely and efficiently to and from school and all school activities. Some exciting news, I guess, for next year because of what's in our contract. We will be rotating in new buses. So what's the 12 years is the age range on there. So we have 11 buses that will be meeting that, and so Durham will be working through that. But that's also been one of our strengths is the maintenance and the safety that the Highway Patrol does on their inspection and how we're doing with that. So. This year we also talked about safety drills and maybe adding a few more safety drills, especially with in the springtime when we're going on field trips. Sometimes we forget about that, and we have a lot of kids that haven't rode a bus on a regular basis, and so we've just tried to have some conversations about how to do that. And I know Wanda's working with the buildings, especially on and how to do that. So. Bus drivers are great. That's definitely a strength too. It's so fun to go out there and see how much they care for kids and work with kids and make their bus a fun environment for them. I can speak personally to my 2 daughters are excited to get donuts on Friday because one of the bus drivers wants to get his bus driver's donuts. So I signed a permission slip that my daughter could have donuts. So it's just one of those things that they really do care for the kids and want to build those relationships, which is awesome. So concerns, driver turnover and keeping enough drivers is always a concern. However, I don't know what they're doing this year. Knock on wood, we have we even have sub drivers. We got extra drivers out there, and that is very rare. I think we spent most of the year last year with 1 or 2 drivers from other areas filling in because we were short, and I think we're actually probably helping some others right now that are in that need. So they've done a great job recruiting and getting those drivers, and again, I think they feel that it's kind of like a family. So that's always a concern. However, it's a strength because since we did this review last time, we have improved with that. So our accidents are down. We try to obviously keep track of that. Some of those are unavoidable. Some of them are avoidable, but and working through that. And then a concern is our district's cost factor. I know it came up kind of in the audit, and I'm still learning some of this, but last time we did the review, we were at our cost factor was 95.45%, which is under the DESE recommendation of 104% for efficiency, and we've increased to 118%. So that means we're not as efficient. Multiple things to that, but the simplest way is we have less kids riding because of enrollment. However, we have sometimes even more mileage just because of where they're living and what we're doing. So that's the easiest way to say what's caused our efficiencies. Now, there's a very complicated formula with many factors, but definitely something we'll continue to look at. I've briefly mentioned it to Wanda, and we'll keep an eye on that if enrollment is dropping and what we need to do and as we move forward. But we also have been increasing some routes. We've had some special ed routes that we've had to increase and some other high needs. But overall, Durham does a great job in meeting our needs and helping us get our kids where they need to go safely.
Do you have any questions or comments for Jason or Wanda?
Oh, one question, do we ever look at, I guess, constantly evaluating our routes to try to get consolidation or something to cut our mileage down and pick up more students on one bus as opposed to another? Because I know in the rural, or you get out on some of the rural areas, that's pretty tough, or you maybe have to drive 3 miles past to turn around and come back. And
the program that we use is called VersaTrans, and it lets me know how many miles they're driving and how time-wise. We really watch the time because we don't want drivers out there for more than an hour on a route from start to finish. And you may have a bus that leaves later to pick up, but that bus is like packed, where they've got 60 kids on there. And then you got a bus that has 12 kids, but they drive 50 miles to pick up those 12 kids. And so it's kind of hard to we do the best we can with trying to get those to merge. And I know whenever I started, I've been there 15 years, but when I started, we had 21 routes. And so it's slowly got down to where we have 18 regular ed routes. And so we've cut back, and they're all, pretty close to the same as far as time-wise.
The program does that evaluation. I don't understand the program too, but you put all the addresses in there, and it routes everything and gives you everything.
It gives you the best case scenario. This is what needs to happen. This kid needs to go on this route, to keep them all kind of balanced.
And isn't there a rule that you have to pick them up so far from their house? I mean, you can't make them walk a really long ways to the bus stop. So it's got to be
in the country. We pick them up at their driveways in the country. In town, which is something we fight with a lot, you can't have a bus stop within 500 feet of another bus stop.
Okay.
So unless and there's little things. It's like if there's an unsafe walking path, then yes, we have to stop.
Okay.
So it means if there's not a sidewalk, we have to stop at their house. So yeah, that's all part of the state law of
Okay.
500 feet.
In another statement, Wanda kind of brought it up, unsafe walking path. Wanda and her team also sits with us on the CARES Coalition, working with the city and trying to address those safe routes, low-hanging branches, and everything else. And the city does a great job responding to that. The drivers keep a risk analysis, I don't know what you call it, but route risk assessment, and we can offer that to the CARES Coalition, and the city helps take care of any of those things. If there's as far as people parking in the wrong spots, which makes it blind spots for buses making turns, tree trimming, that kind of stuff. So really good collaboration, I think, going on right now to make it the safest for our kids. So.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much. Strategic plan.
So I'd like to thank everybody that participated on the strategic planning process. We have the draft of our focus areas, our four focus areas that developed out of the meetings. Our plan is now to, once this is approved, to pretty it up and put it on the plan on the page. Then we will develop a balanced scoring sheet, and we will evaluate these four focus areas every year using that the balanced scoring. And then each year I've asked the committee to come back and to help us with that process of analyzing how we did and how we can improve, and so that's where we work from strategic planning process. So
We need a motion.
Move to approve the strategic planning goals as presented.
Second.
Okay.
Do we have any other discussion on that? Anything for Paul?
When is Jill going to put them in like a nice one page?
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, you can get on that now, Jill.
Ready, set, go.
Okay. Business services parchment proposal. We need a motion.
I move to approve the parchment proposal as presented.
Second.
Now we
I
can
just
talk.
had a couple of questions. I was a little confused by the, whatever they called it, the
Return on
ROI.
investment statement.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Like,
It's
what?
confusing. I agree.
What?
Yeah.
I guess my main concern is if we are going to charge students for this service.
So the way it would work, any current student up to their senior year would not be charged for a transcript. So if we have a senior who wants to send 20 parties,
Okay, that's fine. I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
I was seeing all these figures and I'm like, wait a minute, if the seniors have to pay $4 for every transcript, that's going to add up pretty quickly.
no, current students, no charge.
So
Just-
do we currently charge students? I'm like her. I tried to read it and I gave up. I figured
Oh,
I
that makes me feel even better. You
No,
didn't.
I can't see it, which is my problem. So
Right now, we do not. We do not charge students, and we don't charge alumni or third parties.
okay.
That being said, in the summertime especially, there can be a long lapse in time when a transcript request is made and when one gets sent. It's also impossible for us to track them. So the counseling office can send one, and I think Julie puts an example in here. One got sent to Missouri. They said we did send it. They have record of it, but Mizzou never got it. Parchment takes care of all that. It tracks when they clicked on it, when they opened it, when they saw it. It's an official transcript.
So are we doing them? We're not doing them now electronically?
Yep. They're printed off of SIS. They get a seal put on it. They get a signature on it. They get folded, put in an envelope, mailed.
But Parchment's
Sense.
going to do it electronically, right?
All done electronically.
Okay.
And you're seeing more and more districts go to this. All of the North Kansas City high schools, Oak Park, Winnetonka, Staley,
So
several on the Kansas side are using Parchment.
And just, I'm sure this is in there, and I just couldn't see it. But what is the, what will we charge an alumnus or an alumni for?
We haven't set that price yet. So the way it works is it's a $1,600 a year fee for the high school.
Okay.
They charge $395 the transcript, but then whatever we mark it up would offset our $1,600 cost. So they're charging $395. If we charge $6, we basically recover $2 back from that $1,600 on every transcript that gets sent. And the fees typically range. I've seen anywhere from $6 all the way to $20. There are some schools that are charging third parties.
What third parties ask for transcripts?
Somebody doing a background investigation on a future employee or on a.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Got you.
So we're going from no charge for the manual process, we're automating it, and now we're charging.
Yeah.
It's an interesting approach, an interesting use of technology. I mean, from a consumer perspective, that doesn't build a lot of efficiencies.
Actually, I think it would build some
It's a
efficiencies
convenience fee,
because
like a credit card.
Yeah, I
Actually,
know, and I got the same problem with some of those, but
past
my-
experience, if I was doing a background on somebody, on the highway patrol and I contacted Harrisonville, it might take a week to get an answer back, and
You need that information
I needed
sooner.
it in 2 or 3 days less, and so I see some of these fees, or my company says, "Hey, we need your." My HR department says it, and we pay $6 to get it and have it there and done within a matter of days and electronically and checked off. To me, that is a lot more efficient.
Is it any different than requesting a birth certificate or a death certificate? I mean, I think there's a $13 fee to get that, and it's sent electronically.
And with Parchment, this way, that an alumni or third party would basically log on and ask for it, and once it's submitted, it gets sent.
So how many requests do we have of non-seniors?
It's on here. Hold on one
Is
second.
it on there?
I believe so.
I thought they were all estimated.
250 requests,
Yes.
wasn't it?
Yep.
From
Yeah.
non-seniors?
It's in a single year.
Yep.
It's not very many, is it?
I mean, you could charge $6.40 and recoup the $1,600 fee. So
Well, and think about the time you're saving that employee that's doing all that work. That's a lot of work.
Well, and that's to my point. We're saving the money on the employee, and yet we're passing on a cost of. It's a little skewed in my mind. I'm not opposed to it. Don't get me wrong, but I struggle with that logic. So, of course, I struggle with a lot of logic. So,
You just
Go to the
can't
people in Washington,
see the
D.C.
savings in front of you and the benefit, Chris.
well, I see the benefit absolutely. I see a lot of these things, and some of it is just personal. We call these things convenience fees, like we're doing this as a favor to you. Well, no, let's be upfront. I don't want to go down that rabbit
Well,
hole.
so our registrar in the counseling office, she doesn't work 12 months. So there's a time in the past where she has literally dedicated Fridays on her own to come up and check for transcript requests.
So is the turnaround on this like the same day?
It's instant.
Within 24
Yep.
hours?
What I'm concerned about here is it says the cost is an initial fee of $1,600 for a year, and then with the possibility of raising a little each year. But I don't see. I guess we don't need a contract because of the amount. It's under $1,700 or whatever it is. But where is that going to come from? Does that come out of your budget
Yep.
at the high school?
Correct.
And we have no way of knowing if it's going to
And-
double in the second year. if
It
you're
doesn't
gonna
double.
raise
They said
fees.
there could be a yearly increase just like anything else, but it wouldn't double. And if we don't want to do it, we just stop doing it. We're not under contract.
Because that was my concern. Is
And also that cost is based on our enrollment, which you can see when we gave this estimate was at the beginning of the school year. They put 850 just as a safe number. We're well under that right now.
so
the cost could even go down.
It could go down.
So what is it that we have to vote on? If it's just information, why is it an action item? Because he doesn't need our approval for this, right? Because it's well within his rights to do it, but it's listed on our agenda as an action item.
What's your thoughts?
Yeah, it's more of a process than anything, because Mark has that in his budget to do.
I think since it's something new, it's something that we
Right.
would want to approve because of you could be spending money on all sorts of stuff if it's in your budget, but we'd want to know if it's something different and that we
I
haven't done before.
think we're just trying to be as transparent as possible
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Sure.
Saying we're going to add an expense to people who come in now and are going to see a cost with the.
So basically, because we're adding a cost to the students or whoever.
Or to the
Okay,
alumni.
that's basically what
mainly,
we're voting
yeah.
on. We're not voting to.
Because there's no, we're not
Approve
approving
the
a contract. It's
contract,
under
there's
our
no
what we
contract.
have to
Okay.
approve. So
That
Okay.
just worried me a little bit. I'm like, what am I voting on? Because
Okay.
your budget's your budget. I mean, you spend it how you see fit.
I talked to counselors.
Wait a minute.
I was gonna say, whoa, calm down. He's going Christmas shopping next.
It's his budget, right? Right. I mean, Paul can rein him in if he is out of line. But it's his budget. I mean,
I talked to Chad Herzog at Lee Summit West
No.
and Chris Sarton at Oak Park, and they said it was awesome.
I don't
So
see
they
any
absolutely love it.
downside to it.
I don't either.
Okay, any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Now we need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Have a good night, guys.